we did that recording session in '92. It was 2 years before the record came out. And then when the record came out, the first single was Brown Sugar, and they released it in the South, and it bombed. Okay. Because in America, people weren't listening to music that slow.
The neo soul boom, right? That's
that's slow, that mid-tempo shit. So they put Brown Sugar out, it didn't do well, and then the follow-up single was Me and Those Dreaming Eyes. You're My Lady. Yeah, and that's the one that caught on a little faster, and it's the one that caught on. Then Brown Sugar came back out, and then he was gone from there. So by the time his record came out, and he was starting to climb in his notoriety, there was a neo soul scene started. And then, where Hargrove's homegrown, chick he went to high school with, Erykah Badu, her record was coming out. And I remember seeing her like hanging out at the dance club doing, we were like, who's that girl with that weird thing on her head? And they were always like, oh man, that's my homie, that's Erykah. And we heard her sing, we're like, man, she's got some interesting shit, Then her record, and then Meshell Ndegeocello's record came out.
Did you work with Ndegeocello or not?
No, with Meshell for sure. Yeah. In fact, I did a lot of things.
She's kind of someone who likes neo soul, and soul knows who she is. But she's kind of always like, not in the radar.
She's always right on the outside, which is where she likes to be. Just kind of like,
So she's a good bass player, ain't she, man?
She's a good bass player. She's a good singer. She's a good rapper. She's a good conceptualist.
Yeah. Did you work with her or not? Did you ever?
Sure. In fact, she even played bass with me on a gig one night. I even hired her. She played at the Village Underground.
Going back to your album, that's what we're talking about. So when you decided to go into a more of a, sort of a soul vibe, because you put out an album, right, or two in that sort of.
Yeah, I mean.
Funky.
My first sort of try at it, I did a record for Verve in '97 called Take the Ride, which didn't come out because the label got sold. But there's a lot of that, Gene Lake, the great drummer that played on all Meshell's records, is on it. We went to Berkeley together, that's my homie, and so I had him on it. Will Lee, the great bass player T.M. Stevens is on it. It's an interesting record. And then I did a record called Panther, which was me, and I got my cousin Cy Smith to sing on it. And that's really kind of, it's all about neo soul with some rock shit on it. There's a bunch of different things. And it's me experimenting. I also had a band, a power trio, but the bass player sang, and he's just an amazing soul singer. So we played a lot. We had like some fusion shit we played, and then so for a couple of years I toured with that group as well. It was really
you did that. You did a tour with that guitarist called JK, right?
Yeah, and then
when I was a kid, I bought this DVD of you with this JK.
Oh, the BET DVD, sure.
BET DVD, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good gig, man. Pretty good gig. That drummer, and it's who's on bass there? I can't remember.
That's Doug Wimbush from
that guy is really that bass.
Man, he does all that weird stuff.
Really sick.
Doug Wimbush is bad. So that was great. JK's a good friend, and he's actually a good producer. He owns a studio in the city. And he helped me because with every development, with every new interest, the evolution of sound, I think is really important. And I do pretty well at staying true to my kind of core sound, just the instrument that I get from the instrument. But I like to color it with effects sometimes, but not in such a way where I lose my identity. So JK is like an effects guru. And he got me into the head of looking for pedals and checking things out, and there's some guys that turn pedals into another instrument, like they got the guitar and then this other thing they do with and that's too much for me. I still just want to play the guitar.
Sorry to interrupt. I've noticed you use two pedals, don't you? But it's like just I guess to fine tune your sound.
Unfortunately, I'm guilty of a whole lot more than that. I'm just gonna. That's not working.
Okay, so I guess
there it is. Yeah. And that's my new economized version. I used to, when I first went on tour with Bodie, man, I had a pedal board that was about this big. It had its own flight case. But you know, one of my other guitar mentors was the great Hiram Bullock.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time with Hiram, just hanging out in the city and playing it, you know, watching him play. And what I liked about Hiram was that he always sounded like him. It was always an identifiable, pure sound that he just sprinkled bits of effects on to add more flavor when that could enhance the situation. And so I applied that concept to everything, whether it's playing in jazz or playing in other things. And so my favorite sound, other than using a little delay and a little reverb, I love to use the envelope filter, that old Mutron. I just love that, man. Cool, I prefer that over distortion, because most guitar players are all about distortion. And for me, I'm not that much into that. Man, if you give me a filter, I can play on anything with my envelope filter, and I love it. And so that's kind of like the thing. That's probably the thing that I do that's the biggest departure from my core sound. But it really helps. I feel like it's an
add-on, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't take away from I guess your original sound, man.
Yeah.